Imagine eagerly awaiting a powerful leader, someone who would restore your nation's former glory and liberate you from oppression. Now, picture that leader arriving not as a mighty warrior, but as a humble carpenter, challenging everything you thought you knew. This was the reality for many Jewish people when Jesus came into their midst. The anticipation of a triumphant Messiah, combined with deep-seated traditions and religious beliefs, created a fertile ground for confusion and rejection. Jesus fulfilled numerous prophecies about the Messiah, yet his message and methods were unexpected. His claims of divinity, perceived blasphemy, and radical reinterpretations of the Mosaic law clashed with the established religious norms. This clash was not just theological, but deeply cultural and personal. The Jewish people, devoted to the oneness of God and the traditions passed down through generations, found it difficult to reconcile these with Jesus' teachings. The perception of blasphemy was a significant stumbling block. Jesus' statements like "I and the Father are one" were seen as a direct challenge to the Shema prayer, a cornerstone of Jewish faith. For the religious leaders, this wasn't just a disagreement, it was an existential threat. Imagine the uproar if someone today made similar claims within a devout community. The stakes were incredibly high, and the reaction was one of fierce protection of their beliefs. Moreover, Jesus' challenge to religious traditions was profound. His focus on the spirit of the law, rather than its letter, threatened the authority of the religious leaders. Picture a respected authority figure suddenly questioned and contradicted in front of their followers. This was not merely a theological debate, but a direct challenge to their societal and religious authority. The resistance was intense and deeply personal. Despite the miracles and acts of compassion that Jesus performed, many Jews remained resistant to change. Witnessing a miracle, but attributing it to demonic forces rather than divine power speaks to the fear and rigidity of established beliefs. This resistance wasn't just about Jesus. It was about the broader challenge of embracing a transformative and often uncomfortable change in understanding faith and identity. As we delve into why the Jewish people rejected Jesus as the Messiah, we'll explore the intricate weave of prophecies, perceived blasphemy, challenges to tradition, and the human resistance to change. These elements combine to form a complex picture of faith, expectation, and identity that continues to resonate throughout history. Stay with us as we unravel these profound themes and uncover the deeper reasons behind this pivotal moment in religious history. Many Old Testament prophecies foretold the coming of Jesus, touching upon his birthplace, his sufferings, and even the timing of his arrival. Yet, there were also prophecies that spoke of an earthly kingdom and a majestic reign that were not realized during his first coming. This apparent contradiction led to significant confusion and, ultimately, rejection by many. People had been eagerly awaiting a powerful, earthly ruler who would restore Israel's glory. Imagine expecting a valiant king, only to find a humble carpenter. This dissonance was striking. For example, someone who expected a grand castle might feel disillusioned finding a modest home instead. When Jesus arrived, he fulfilled numerous prophecies in ways that were unexpected and profound. Bethlehem, a seemingly insignificant town, became the birthplace of the Messiah. His humble beginnings and the nature of his sufferings, including the crucifixion, were detailed in scriptures like Isaiah 53. However, the expectation of an earthly kingdom remained unfulfilled, leading to doubts. It's akin to waiting for a grand parade, but witnessing a quiet procession instead. The Jews anticipated a triumphant Messiah who would liberate them from Roman rule, but Jesus offered spiritual liberation instead. The concept of Jesus establishing a heavenly kingdom was a radical departure from the anticipated earthly reign. His teachings focused on the kingdom of God within hearts, not on political dominance. This was challenging to grasp. Think of it like planning for a tangible inheritance, only to be offered wisdom and love instead. His arrival's timing matched the prophecies, yet the fulfillment of these in a spiritual sense rather than a physical one baffled many. Consider the parable of the mustard seed, which grows in ways unseen, Much like Jesus' impact, despite Jesus performing miracles and teaching with authority, many could not reconcile their expectations with reality. His entry into Jerusalem on a donkey, fulfilling Zechariah's prophecy, contrasted sharply with the anticipated royal procession. Imagine expecting a grand chariot and instead seeing a humble ride. This stark contrast fueled skepticism. Even his disciples initially struggled to understand the nature of his mission. It's like expecting a fierce warrior and meeting a peaceful sage. The expectations of grandeur were deeply ingrained. The divergence between the anticipated warrior king and the suffering servant created a significant barrier. Many Jews could not see past the immediate political deliverance they craved. Imagine longing for immediate relief in a crisis, only to receive long-term solutions. Jesus' emphasis on a future heavenly kingdom over immediate earthly power was a tough pill to swallow. They expected a lion but encountered a lamb. This shift in perspective required a profound transformation in understanding prophecy and messianic expectations. This confusion over prophecies often led to outright rejection. Many saw Jesus' message as contradicting their understanding of the Torah and the prophets. Consider being told that the long-expected hero is not here to conquer but to serve. It's like waiting for a storm to pass, only to find you must build shelter instead. The Jews' deep-rooted expectations were not easily altered. Jesus' message required a shift from physical to spiritual thinking, a transition that was challenging for many to make. This dichotomy between expectations and reality was at the heart of their confusion. Jesus' mission unfolded. The picture of the Messiah began to clarify, but it still clashed with long-held beliefs. His resurrection, the ultimate fulfillment of prophecy, was the cornerstone of his divine mission. However, even then, the idea of an earthly kingdom persisted in many minds. It's like witnessing a miracle, but struggling to comprehend its full significance. This opened a loop for the subsequent challenges he faced, such as accusations of blasphemy for claiming divinity, which further complicated his acceptance among the Jewish people. Jesus' claims of divinity were among the most controversial aspects of his ministry. When he declared, "I and the Father are one," it struck at the heart of Jewish monotheism. The Jewish people, deeply devoted to the Shema prayer, which affirms the oneness of God, saw this as a direct contradiction. Imagine someone coming into a tightly knit community and making a claim that challenges the very foundation of their beliefs. This was not just a theological debate. It was a matter of profound religious and cultural identity to the Jewish authorities. Jesus' statements were not just bold but blasphemous. Calling himself the Son of God and forgiving sins were actions that, in their eyes, only God could perform. It's like a citizen declaring themselves the ruler of a kingdom without any recognition from the established monarchy. This perceived arrogance was intolerable. The reaction wasn't merely about disagreement. It was about preserving the sanctity and purity of their faith. They felt a strong need to defend the integrity of their religious traditions against what they saw as a dangerous heresy. The accusation of blasphemy was a serious charge, one that could lead to severe consequences, including death. When Jesus forgave sins or healed on the Sabbath, he wasn't just breaking minor rules. He was challenging the established order. Picture someone walking into a court and rewriting the laws on the spot. Such actions demanded a strong response. The leaders felt compelled to uphold their interpretation of the law, seeing Jesus' actions as an existential threat to their authority and the cohesion of their religious community. The context of Roman occupation added another layer to this tension. Under Roman rule, any disturbance could lead to harsh reprisals, so maintaining order was crucial. The leaders feared that Jesus' growing influence might provoke Roman intervention. Imagine trying to keep peace in a turbulent environment, with every new claim or miracle potentially sparking unrest. This fear of instability contributed to their harsh stance against him. They weren't just protecting their religious beliefs, but also the fragile status quo under a powerful occupying force. Jesus' teachings often included profound, transformative ideas that required deep reflection and a shift in perspective. For example, his Sermon on the Mount redefined righteousness, emphasizing internal purity over external observance. This was revolutionary. Imagine being told that all you've been practicing needs a deeper, more introspective approach. Such teachings were seen as undermining the traditional interpretations held by religious leaders. They found his radical approach threatening, a direct challenge to their authority and long-held traditions. Many Jews expected a Messiah who would uphold and perhaps even elevate their existing laws and customs. Instead, Jesus often seemed to turn these expectations on their head. His focus on the spirit of the law, rather than the letter of the law, was a paradigm shift. Think of someone coming into a meticulously maintained garden and suggesting that the wildflowers outside are just as beautiful. This shift in focus was unsettling. His message of love, mercy, and internal transformation was profound, but also deeply challenging to established norms. This perception of blasphemy created an almost insurmountable barrier. Even his miracles and acts of compassion couldn't overshadow the controversy of his divine claims. It's like witnessing incredible feats, but being unable to see past a single, disconcerting detail. The Jewish leaders' commitment to monotheism, combined with their role as guardians of the faith, made it almost impossible for them to accept Jesus as anything but a blasphemer. This opened another loop, as his challenge to religious traditions further intensified the conflict and misunderstanding. Jesus didn't just teach. He fundamentally challenged many established Jewish traditions and interpretations of the Mosaic Law. This was no small feat, as the Mosaic Law was the bedrock of Jewish society. Picture a revered and ancient tree, deeply rooted and immovable. Jesus came and shook its branches, suggesting a different way to understand its purpose. His teachings often reinterpreted these laws, emphasizing their spirit over the letter. This wasn't just controversial, it was revolutionary. One vivid example is how Jesus approached the Sabbath. The Sabbath was a sacred institution, a day of rest ordained by God. Yet, Jesus healed on the Sabbath, stating that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Imagine a deeply held tradition being redefined before your eyes. This statement flipped the conventional understanding, focusing on human need over rigid observance. For the religious leaders, this was a direct threat to their authority and the established order they upheld. Jesus also redefined concepts of purity and sin. In a society where certain foods, actions, and even people were deemed unclean, Jesus emphasized internal purity and the state of the heart. For instance, he declared all foods clean, focusing on what comes from within a person as the true measure of purity. Think of it like a strict dietary rule being completely overturned. This approach undermined the elaborate system of rituals and rules that defined Jewish religious life. It was as if the foundation of their practices was being called into question. The way Jesus associated with sinners, tax collectors, and others considered impure further exemplified his challenge to traditions. He ate with them, healed them, and showed them compassion, often to the horror of the religious elite. Imagine a respected figure today openly embracing those shunned by society. This inclusiveness was radical. It demonstrated a love that transcended societal boundaries and conventions. However, for the religious leaders, it seemed like a disregard for the holiness they meticulously guarded. Another significant aspect was Jesus' reinterpretation of the law of Moses. While he didn't abolish it, he brought a deeper understanding that often contradicted traditional interpretations. For example, in the Sermon on the Mount, he took commandments like, "Do not murder," and extended them to include anger and contempt. Picture expanding a simple rulebook into a comprehensive guide for life. This profound deepening of the law's meaning was both enlightening and unsettling. It demanded an internal transformation that was far more challenging than external adherence. This challenge to religious traditions was a catalyst for conflict. The religious leaders, seeing their authority and the established order threatened, often reacted with hostility. Think of guardians of a sacred temple facing an unexpected reformer. They viewed Jesus not as a teacher, but as a dangerous revolutionary. His teachings, which were meant to liberate and deepen understanding, were perceived as attacks on the very fabric of their society. This perceived threat to their authority was a significant factor in their rejection of him. Jesus' teachings invited a radical shift in perspective, focusing on love, mercy, and internal righteousness over strict ritual observance. This was a profound change. Imagine being asked to see the world through entirely new lenses. For many, this shift was too much to accept. The tension between old and new, tradition and transformation, set the stage for the intense resistance he faced. This opened another loop, as this resistance to change, despite witnessing his miracles, highlighted the deep-seated challenges in accepting his message. Despite the miracles performed by Jesus, many Jews resisted accepting him as the Messiah. This resistance stemmed from a deep-rooted attachment to their existing beliefs and traditions. Think of it as being firmly planted in familiar soil, unwilling to move despite the winds of change. Even witnessing extraordinary acts, such as healing the sick or raising the dead, wasn't enough to alter their steadfast convictions. The human tendency to cling to the known often overrides the openness to new possibilities. No matter how miraculous. One striking example of this resistance was the attribution of Jesus' miracles to the power of Satan. Rather than acknowledging divine intervention, some claimed he was working through demonic forces. Imagine seeing something incredible and immediately questioning its source. This skepticism was fueled by fear and the need to protect their established beliefs. Instead of being seen as signs of divine authority, these miracles were perceived as threats to their understanding of faith and order. The familiar often feels safer than the unknown. Even when the unknown holds promise, the fear of change can be paralyzing. For many Jews, accepting Jesus as the Messiah would mean a complete overhaul of their religious and cultural identity. It's like being asked to abandon a lifetime's worth of traditions and embrace an entirely new way of life. This is no small feat. The comfort of routine and the security of long-held beliefs create a formidable barrier against change. Jesus' teachings, which emphasized internal transformation and a new covenant with God, required a leap of faith that many were not ready to take. In times of uncertainty, people often double down on their existing beliefs. The period of Roman occupation was fraught with tension and instability. In such a context, the idea of a radical change in religious understanding was even more daunting. Imagine living under constant threat and being asked to embrace a new and seemingly risky path. The religious leaders, who were seen as the protectors of Jewish faith, were particularly resistant. Their authority and identity were tied to the established interpretations of the law, making them natural opponents to Jesus' message of transformation. The miracles of Jesus, intended to reveal his divine nature and authority, often became points of contention instead of acceptance. People who witnessed these miracles were faced with a choice: to reconsider their beliefs or to find reasons to dismiss what they saw. It's like encountering undeniable evidence but choosing to ignore it because it disrupts your worldview. This cognitive dissonance led many to rationalize their resistance by attributing his works to malevolent forces. The very acts meant to demonstrate divine love and power were twisted into evidence of blasphemy. Jesus' call for internal change and repentance was a significant hurdle. He asked people to look within, to examine their hearts and minds, and to align themselves with God's will. This level of introspection and self-examination is challenging. Imagine being asked to not only change your actions, but your very way of thinking. It's a process that requires humility and a willingness to admit one's flaws. For many, this was too great a challenge. The resistance wasn't just to Jesus, but to the transformative journey he invited them to undertake. This resistance to change, despite the clear evidence of Jesus' miracles, highlighted the profound challenge of shifting deeply entrenched beliefs. It wasn't just about accepting a new teacher, It was about redefining their understanding of God and faith. This ongoing struggle between the old and the new, the familiar and the revolutionary, set the stage for the intense conflicts that followed. This resistance paved the way for further rejection and opened the loop to the subsequent events that ultimately led to Jesus' crucifixion. As we've journeyed through the intricate reasons why many Jewish people rejected Jesus as the Messiah, it becomes clear that this rejection was deeply rooted in prophecy, tradition, and human nature. Understanding these complexities can profoundly enrich our appreciation of biblical stories and their enduring impact. But what does this mean for us today? Think about how often we cling to our own beliefs, even in the face of compelling evidence or transformative experiences. It's a natural human tendency to resist change, to hold on to what's familiar. But growth often requires stepping out of our comfort zones and embracing new understandings. So, I challenge you, what beliefs might be holding you back? How can you open your heart and mind to new possibilities? If this message touched your heart, if you feel a stirring within, consider the profound love and purpose that Jesus offers. He has a plan for your life, one filled with hope and transformation. Accepting Jesus can be the beginning of a journey that changes everything. Will you take that step today? Before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more amazing stories and teachings from the Bible. And if you enjoyed this video, I believe you'll love our next recommendation. Click on the card on your screen and watch the incredible story, Why God Cannot Kill Satan or Fallen Angels. Be inspired by this mysterious and revealing tale and uncover the secrets of the Bible. May God bless you immensely. Until the next video.